YouTube Ozzy and the Code House is back with my updated NFL power rankings heading into week 6 of the season. We are every single Tuesday morning updating these, ranking teams from 32 to 1 based on how they are playing. We have a new number 1 this week. Excited to reveal things here. Next video will be our weekly picks. Then we'll have score predictions, picks against the spread, bets, more trade deadline videos on the way. We have a recent big one, so go ahead and check that out. You will not be disappointed in our content that we have every single week, even in the offseason, so join us, like, subscribe, to notifications on. Follow us on Twitter, very important. A lot going on there, recent news, always interacting with you guys. Links pinned in the comments for that, and our sponsors, Liquid IV, code GOAT on there, GLD shop, code GOAT. This is the Cowboys chain from the GLD shop. They have all NFL teams, more jewelry. We have a giveaway. You'll get an NFL pennant of your choosing with the chain. There's a link for that giveaway pinned in the comments, so check it out. So to the power rings, I mean, the Panthers stepped up a little bit this week, but they still don't have a win, and they did blow a comeback, but maybe some progress for Bryce Young and that offense. I mean, Adam Thielen's been great, but still looking like the overall the worst team in football so far, but maybe weren't the worst team just last week alone based on how they play. So I guess there's a little bit of positive and there's some progress. The Patriots moved down a spot. They've been playing very, very bad, obviously. They're bad pretty much everywhere, especially with Judon and Gonzalez out. They look pretty much – and there's good players still, but I don't remember a Patriots roster looking like this. It's been some time, so it's tough. And then Garoppolo goes down early. They go against Hoyer, and they can't beat Hoyer either. So I guess they made it close in the end, but they're down a spot. The Giants, somewhat of a rare situation in my power rankings where a team loses and they move up. The Patriots have been so bad, and the Giants actually looked pretty decent in their loss against the Bills. I also thought they got screwed in the end on that no call. They did get a call right before that. Maybe they missed some calls on them, in the Bills' favor or in their favor against the Bills earlier, whatever. But, I think they had an opportunity to win that game. They probably should have won that game. But we don't go off shoulds, really. They lost the game. But overall, they're looking better than the Patriots right now. I did like maybe a little bit because we still have to remember the previous games before this last Giants game. It's not just about the last game, so that's why they didn't move up any more than that. But they played really good defense. The offense, even though they didn't score touchdowns, looked better. They looked a little bit more in sync, a little more smooth, which is that because no Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor. But the Giants end up moving up a spot. The Bears stay put. Their game was a shit show, to be honest. That was just both teams seemed very bad, and the Bears lost it. So there's quite a few teams that feel like number 31, number 32. We just only can put 2 teams there, so that's the thing. A lot of these teams staying put. Broncos played a little bit better on defense. The offense looked worse, than it usually does, and not that it looks good at all before that, but they're at 28. Again, there's teams that feel like there's multiple 31-ish ranked teams here, but only one team can be ranked in that spot. Cardinals at 27. Played a good first half. Just missing the talent, and we knew that going. That's why people projected them to be last. They're playing a little tougher than some of the teams that are last, that are behind them. But the second half, I don't know if it's the lack of adjustments for the Cardinals in the second half of these games. I think it's the other teams are adjusting properly while having just the better talent. I think that's what it is. So they played tough in the first half against a good Rams team at least. 26, the Vikings win, but there's really nothing there to move them up for me. That game, but if you watched it between the Vikings and the Bears, just seemed like a battle between the 2 worst teams in football. And the Vikings did win it, and they got good pressure. Their blitz is fantastic. Brian Flores can call a good defense. But yeah, I know they didn't have Jefferson. I know they're in Chicago. It's a sloppy field, I suppose, because it rained all week, but the offense, they're capable of being much better than that. I mean, they could have easily lost that game. So they did win. There's really no room to move them up after that one. Packers stay put at 25. Yeah, I thought about maybe flipping those, but taking how these teams played on all of their games, maybe you can argue the Packers a little bit just because the Vikings have been so sloppy. I think it's the main thing there. So I guess those 2 teams are kind of close. Titans down 3 spots, a disappointing one in London. They kind of came back, but they got completely outplayed in that game. Tannehill got hurt. He's declined anyways. Offense is just so boring, even though Hopkins looks great. Henry's still good, so maybe it doesn't have to be that boring, but it is. they can't win when they're not home, it feels like. They look like a totally different team at home. We'll see if that continues to be the case after the bye week. We'll see who's at quarterback after the bye week. But, the Bengals game was ridiculous. Like, they were dominant, actually, in that game. But, since then, I've seen some really bad football. And overall, I've seen some pretty bad football, maybe minus the Chargers and the the Chargers and the Bengals game. Their best game was definitely the Bengals game. But they're down 3 spots. Raiders stay put. Yeah, they're putting together some wins. They barely escaped the Packers and, not the best battle of teams. And then this past week, they escaped the Patriots. I know Garoppolo got hurt. I like that they got Mayer going. Just have they overall been, looking at the resume, been better than the teams that I have ahead of them? No, and that's why they're 23. It's pretty close, though. If they win another game, and I don't know what's going to happen with that Bears-Raiders, both quarterbacks going to be out. Like, I don't know if I want to watch that game. I have to, but, so we'll see. But if they get another win on a win streak, and that could boost them no matter who the opponent is, really. But we'll see. Colts down 2 spots, 22. Yeah, disappointing one against the Jags. That game was over pretty quickly. Not too many ass beatings this week. I thought that was one of them. They've been a little sneaky, pulling off some of these wins they're not really expected to. But Colts fans seem to be upset where I have them ranked every week, so I don't really know what I'm supposed to do for you this week here. They're only down 2 spots, and they got completely outplayed. I think they just rely on things kind of really going their way, especially early in games, and they just squeak by teams that they probably wouldn't beat maybe down the stretch, like in the big part of the season. So, they've been better than expected, but have they impressed like overall that much, more than the 20s? Like, no, this is where they belong right now. So I don't really know. I'm not really sure what to tell those fans that are pretty upset. There's just mobile fans kind of think that think different fan bases that think that their team should be higher, but that's one I've kind of noticed. Falcons down 2 spots. Two things I thought the Falcons had going for them so far this year. The defense feels like it's improved, and I still think that. But they have been a really good football team at home. They haven't been away. They're kind of like the Titans, and they have a former Titans coach. So I thought that was funny, but I think coincidence. But they have been really good at home, and then they lose to the Commanders at home, look really sloppy. And the Commanders aren't the worst team in the world, but how they've been playing recently, they've been struggling more than anybody in the league. So to lose that game at home and to be as sloppy as they were, I mean, it's crazy that they were in the game still, given that, how many interceptions Ritter threw. But Bijan couldn't get anything going on the ground. Like, there should be more in this game. And I don't love the 2-point conversion because they finally, they needed to make a drive, score a drive without throwing an interception, and they needed to go for 2 at the end. They had a lot of chances, couldn't do it. So I wasn't really thrilled with them either. But at times, they look like a pretty good team. But they're another team that them and the Colts kind of been squeaking by in wins, and then the losses don't look good at all. A lot of disappointment in those games. So they're in a similar boat, I suppose. But number 20 is going to be the Commanders. They get off that losing streak. I still don't know what happened in that Bears game. But in the Falcons game, they win a game they're really not supposed to win. Is it a shocker they won? No. It was supposed to be a close game. Obviously, it was a small spread for a reason. But they looked pretty good. I thought it was a team effort. They clutched up, created turnovers. They executed on offense. It felt like kind of when they needed to. I wish they went and put the game away, though. Go and put the game away. Because that's the thing. Like, they played great in all those turnovers, and the Falcons still had a shot. They kept getting more and more shots. So I didn't really love that, but a much-needed win. And they look much better than last week. So maybe a young team is already like turning around and improving. I guess to be determined. That's kind of what it looked like. So they go up 4 spots. Still a team I'm not really thrilled with lately. That's why they're in the 20s still. Saints down 1 spot. Defense I still really like. Offense, I mean, they have production. They can move the ball, but you got to get the ball in the end zone, So tough loss against the Texans. It was a game that could have went either way. I know a lot of people were fully expecting the Saints to win that game. I thought it was a tough one, but just need more consistency from the offense. But they're down a spot to 1 spot to 19. I think I like their defense still. The Jets up 4 spots. I mean, they've been looking pretty good, and then even the Chiefs lost, but they still lost, and they looked decent against the Broncos. They squeaked by, and it's like, all right, they're making a little bit of progress. We can't really move them a whole bunch, and they beat the Eagles, and it's mainly because of defense. I guess they moved the ball and got a field goal when they needed to, but the defense can play with anybody, so that means the Jets can pretty much play with. There's some teams I definitely think they would struggle. They struggle with the Cowboys. I think they would struggle with a team like the Niners, but that's an assumption, obviously, but they can play with pretty much anybody, so they're kind of making their way back up. They're up 4 spots. Can they get things going a little bit more on offense? Because they're not playing the Broncos every week, obviously. But they did enough in this game. They took down an undefeated team, so very much impressed. They're up 4 spots to 18. Number 17 is going to be the Steelers. Steelers had a bye. So usually teams don't tend to move down that much on a bye. It could happen though. This really the reason it happened was there's 3 teams that needed to move ahead of them, and we'll talk about the Bengals, the Rams, the Texans. Those 3 teams. Those teams, I think people could agree, need to be ahead based on what they just did and what they've done, what these teams done, on their resume as a whole. They need to be ahead of them. So that is really down 3 spots. 3 teams had to move ahead of them. So that's really all it is. Big game against the Rams this week. That should be a really good game. It sounds like Kyron Williams would be out, so that could be a big help for the Steelers coming off the bye. So that's a big game, especially when it comes to the power rankings. The Chargers are down 3 spots to 16. I mean, they put up a fight with who I still think is a good team in the Cowboys. I think everyone's got to think they're a pretty good team still. They're not the best. Pretty good fight. I hated that game, by the way. If you follow us on Twitter, I mean, the refs turned a good game into a brutal game to watch. Just being a football fan, like a diehard football fan, I'm not rooting for a specific team in a game like that, and the refs just changing the game completely, just ruining the flow of the game and calling. There's a difference between refs that call ticky-tack stuff and that. Like, they were calling ticky-tack stuff, but they the officials that do that, at least they kind of stay consistent, These guys were throwing there was non-existing, there wasn't even ticky-tack stuff. Some ticky-tack stuff. I've said those words too many times, but just everything. And then they would miss brutal situation flags, moments, and then teams would fail on 3rd down, but there's a flag for an automatic first, but the teams would do a good thing, and it was no flag, it's coming back. It's the refs were who were playing in that game. They stole the show. That was actually why everyone views I think people will mainly go off their team and did the refs favor the other team. That's the worst game that they've seen. I think the worst officiated games are the ones that maybe they don't I think they favored one team a little bit more in that game, but that's really not the point. I think the worst ones are they just completely ruin the entire game. They ruin the flow. Again, when teams did something good, it was nope. When team did something bad, it was here you go. And it was awful. And they're just the refs just being a mess. Them not letting Dak snap the ball, and then be okay, snap it. Wait, no, as the play started. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And the more I'm talking about it, that was maybe one of not the worst in the season. That was one of the worst I've ever seen in my life. I don't know. But anyways, off topic, the Chargers down 3 spots. I like the defense in that game. I know it's hard to judge off that game because the refs they were in the spotlight. I mean, I can't believe it. But the defense looked pretty good. They got clutch stops when they needed to, besides that last scoring drive, I guess, for the Cowboys. So the defense, in the beginning of the year, is is this the worst defense in football? And look at the run defense in this game. The run defense, I mean, they've kind of come a long way because last year they were pretty bad. The year before they were the worst in football. I thought it really stepped up. So there's some positives. They put up a fight with the Cowboys. It's tough to judge off that type of game because the officiating, but there are some bad. Herbert didn't play right. Maybe the fingers bothering him, but at the same time he was running. But that was his best part of his game. He was scrambling like crazy. So I don't know. So he was a little off. It's weird. The offensive line looks elite, and then in the last drive of the game, it always does not. And then I guess Herbert too is the same thing. So why is that a common theme for the Chargers? I still can't believe Staley has the job. Was he absolutely awful in this game? No. But the defense, it's always it was a weird game. They're down 3 spots. I still, even though the record doesn't show it, maybe most of their play doesn't show it this year, but you can still feel you look at all the 2nd and forevers and 3rd and forevers, and they just air the ball downfield first down. It was make it look so easy. I think it's them and the Chiefs, maybe the Dolphins now, the Bills. Sometimes they have teams like that. It's just a part of their game that nobody else really could do. So there's still some good where I feel like they're a top 16 team, but Oh, I hated that officiating. The Texans are in the top 15. They're up 2 spots. Good win against the Saints. I thought it was a team effort. They played well on both sides of the ball. They kind of showed up when they needed to in that game on both sides of the ball. Very well coached. They're on the rise. They're getting better and better. That's a team to watch for the future as well. So excited about the Texans. I call them the sneaky team going this year too. I feel pretty good about that. My sneaky team every year ends up being dead accurate. So I guess always can't wait to see who next year's is. 14, the Bucs go down 2 spots. He has a tough one, especially offensively. Couldn't get anything consistent going. Did play a good Lions team. I thought the defense was all right. I know Goff kind of played one of his better games. He threw on them, but I thought the defense, they stopped the run. They got in Goff's face early. They gave their offense enough opportunities. It wasn't like crazy good field position opportunities, but either the offense let the defense down. They've still felt like a pretty good team, way better than expected this year. And better than the teams behind them still. So they're down 2 spots to 14. Next, the Rams up 3 spots, 13. I've been saying the Rams have felt better than their record. But winning and losing matters in these power rankings. But maybe they weren't going down in the rankings as much as other teams that are looking bad and losing. And they look a little sketchy in the first half. And I've been calling for McVay to run the football more for weeks. Second half, they come out and pound the football. And it just motivates the entire team. They play better all across the board, and they dominate the Cardinals. It was a really good performance on both sides of the ball. Tough that Kyren Williams is hurt all of a sudden because he was fantastic. So that's a killer. And they'll play the Steelers, which will be a good game this week, and they'll be without their back. So that's tough. But they're up 3 spots to 13. Rams and Bucs, both teams been better than expected this year. And the Rams thing is like health, though. It's like I knew they could be dangerous. It's just like I'm maybe shame on me, but I'm honestly surprised Stafford's still going like fully. I'm not surprised maybe he's still in the game, but fully healthy right now. But hopefully that continues. 12, the Bengals up 3 spots. They're starting to get going as well. The offense you wish would have kept going throughout the whole game. Though they looked good early. Seahawks made some adjustments. But the defense looked great for the Bengals. I mean, they didn't look great early, and it kind of flipped. Can they get the offense and the defense on the same page? Can they put something consistent together? But they're still a tough team. They're still not the Bengals we thought they would be. I think they could get there, but that has nothing to do with the power rankings. Right now they're not that team, but they are still a team that could play with anybody. They're still a team that can win at any given time on offense or on defense. And it feels like they're starting to put something a little something together here. So they'll be up 3 spots to number 12. Reality, it doesn't feel like there's a long list of good, consistent teams right now. So some teams that really haven't been that great all year are going to have a pretty good number next to their name, meaning like their rank. But reality is there's not a long list of very consistent good teams, it feels like, which makes it more entertaining, actually. It's kind of a little bit more open. The Ravens are going to stay put at 11, almost moved up. But they got to put something consistent together that kind of that matters, streaks, things like that. Can't slip up in the fashion they did against the Colts and the Steelers. But coming off a much-needed win against the Titans, they did outplay the Titans quite a bit, so good to show that. But I didn't like they kind of let the Titans back in the game. Like, everything went the Ravens' way. They outplayed their opponent, and the Titans still kind of getting back in that game and have a shot. I don't really love that, to be honest, but if they would have went out there and just obliterated them, which they almost should have, then it would have been tough to not move them up. But again, a main thing, they won, good, staying in the top 11. But kind of put something consistent together. Don't slip up like you do. You tried to slip up in that game, so that's kind of the thing for the Ravens to get back inside the top 10. Seahawks down 2 spots, number 10. Overall, you look at the Seahawks, what they've been doing before last game. It's been pretty good. They've been, on a streak, obviously, looking pretty good, playing pretty good football, getting better on defense. So they did lose. They slipped up against the Bengals. It was a close game, but because what they've been doing, look at their resume. Talking too much, I'm gonna lose my voice. They're not going to move down too much. We're not. They're a team that's not going to get punished for one loss. But offense started off good, then they kind of disappeared. Geno went from throwing some really good balls to not playing well. But I like the defense because the weakness of this team has been the defense. But we know it has good young talent, and they are showing. They're kind of starting to really prove, look at the last couple games and this game, that they are getting better and better. So there is a little bit of positive in there, even though they lost a close game. So they're down 2 spots to number 10. So tough loss, but overall they've been playing some pretty good football. Number 9, the Cowboys up a spot in LA Monday night. Weird game. I mean, you can't take away too much for that game because I already went on a rant when I was talking about the Chargers, the officiating. I thought it was bad for both sides. I did think it kind of favored the Chargers a little bit if I had to pick. So the Cowboys kind of overcoming that. But the game was changed completely on both sides from the officials. So it was a weird game. But winning in LA on Monday night, finding a way, defense clutching up. Offense I expect a little bit more from, but when they needed to, I guess they got points. They're going to go up a spot to number 9. On to the top 8. The Bills won. They moved down 2 spots, which is somewhat rare. It's actually been happening a little bit more this year in my power rankings than in the past. But if they went out there and just beat the Giants, took care of business, they didn't even need to dominate them. They don't even need to dominate. Just go out there and just beat them up. Like, just do what you're supposed to do. Win by a 10, 7, 10, 14, whatever it is. It would have been impossible to move them down. But 2 things. Other teams playing great and just deserving of moving up, while were the Bills the last 2 weeks lose to the Jags, and then they looked a little against the Giants. I mean, I think they were very lucky to win that game, to be honest. It's more so teams passing them, but teams would not have been able to pass them if they just go out there and did their job fully. So it was a tough situation there, but they are down 2 spots. They did get the win, so it's not like if they lost that game, I mean, they would have been another loss. They would have dropped probably in that 11 range, and the team, Ravens and up would have moved ahead of them, so at least that for the Bills. But last 2 weeks I haven't been playing the best of football. I know some guys got beat up, but more so they're down 2 spots because teams were deserving of moving ahead of them. If the Bills went out there and played the football that they should have played, then teams probably wouldn't have been deserving of moving ahead of them. So that's kind of how that worked. The Browns up 2 spots to number 7 without Deshaun Watson. They beat the Niners. The Browns have been playing good football this year. This year was a little bit of a fluky of a game. They're missing their quarterback against the Ravens, but they do have losses. That's kind of what's stopping them from being maybe one, up in the top 3. But they look like one of the best defenses in football. They took down the best team in football. That means something. So love this team. Love how it's coached defensively. Love the players on both sides of the ball. They're getting better and better. If they get Deshaun Watson back, they could become a contender. They could. So they're up 2 spots to number 7. Just think, even without their quarterback, given that they didn't have their quarterback, I think they've slightly been playing better ball in the Bills, especially recently. So that's why they are ahead of them. The Eagles are down 4 spots to 6. A disappointing loss. I know it is only 1 loss, so I mean they're not going to, get outside the top 8, but look at their resume. They have a bunch of wins, and that matters a lot, so you're going to be in the top 6. But you look at those games, like, were they overly that impressive in those games compared to the Eagles last year? Not really, the more you think about it. But they were winning, and they had some good moments. But they slip up against the Jets. I mean, it's one thing if the Jets they do have a really good defense, and they played great defense in this game. But I thought the Eagles more so lost this game against the Jets, team that they're not supposed to lose to, just because how bad the Eagles played. I thought it was more so towards that. Not taking anything away from the Jets, but it's more. My point is more so that's what affected the Eagles moving down 4 spots because they just played bad football. It really felt like so. They're down 4 to number 6. See if they can get back on track. The tougher part of their schedule is starting to come as well. Top 5, the Jags up 2 spots. The Jags are playing as good a football as anyone, just based off recently, the recent few weeks. If you put it all together, they had a little bit of that sloppy start. So that's kind of what's, again, right now they're playing as good as football as anyone, maybe the best. So that probably would say number 1, number 2 around that range, 3. Somewhere around that range, but you still hold on to that early part, so couldn't quite be there. But again, they're playing very, very good football. They obliterate the Colts this past week. They beat the Bills, who were very hot at that point the week before. They dominate the Falcons the week before that. They're on a roll. They're winning with multiple different things, like they're winning on, in multiple phases on both sides of the ball. They look great. Hopefully Trevor Lawrence is healthy they play on Thursday night. They play a tough defense on Thursday night. So, but they're playing some really good football right now. Look like one of the better teams in the AFC. So they're making their way up. They dug themselves a little bit of a hole if you're talking about these power rankings, from being in the top 3. Now they're getting their way back in there. They're playing some really good football, like I said. On to the top 4. Number 4, the Chiefs are going to stay put. They are on a win streak. That big of a win streak, it's hard to move you down, or anything like that. But they're not playing to the best of where they can play. I think the defense is all right. They should be against the Broncos. And they can execute a little bit more on offense. There's some interesting play calls. There's always interesting play calls in Andy Reid, but I think there's more interesting ones in crucial situations, if that makes sense. So I think it's a good thing, though. They're on a win streak. They're number 4 while they're not playing their game. Like, there's other teams that are not playing their game. Like, the Bills didn't play their game last week. I think the Vikings are the one that stands out to me the most. They're not playing anywhere near their game. Look where they're at. So the Chiefs are not really playing their game, and they're winning, and they're ranked number 4. So you can actually take a big positive out of that. Like, if they start to play their game, how scary is it going to be? On to the top 3. Dolphins going to stay put at 3. Close to moving up. Really good comeback performance. Adjustments were great. It's the Panthers. It's in Miami. That big-time home field advantage because the Heat. They should take care of business. But, yeah, I didn't like the way they started. I still worry about the defense. It's great that Jalen Ramsey didn't come back earlier than expected, but it has nothing to do with the power rankings. But super explosive offense, could score on you at any given time. They're a top 3 team right now. They're a top 3 team. That massive game coming up on Sunday Night Football. The Dolphins at the Eagles. Eagles got to be a little salty after that loss. They're going to be at home. They're going to be wearing their throwbacks. The Dolphins got that explosive offense. I think that's going to be a shootout game. There's been games, I thought last night could be a shootout. I think the refs changed that, but, I guess there's been surprising games where you think they're going to be a shootout. They're defensive games. Should be a defensive game. It's weird this year, but that should be a high-scoring game. I'm excited about that heavyweight battle. But the Dolphins are at number 3. Number 2, and I can't believe it, the Detroit Lions are number 1. I mean, the years of struggling, the years of pain maybe to their fans, years and years, and because that's kind of like the era I grew up into, just remembering the Lions, like just being the Lions, like after the Barry Sanders era is kind of where I kind of grew up too. So seeing them number 1 is pretty crazy. The Niners are number 2. And then a rare moment too. The Lions going up 4 spots like that. Week 7 it's tough to move a lot, up in the top. Bottom line is, they got help with the Niners losing. But the bottom line is the Lions are playing they're playing like the best team in football right now. They're playing the best football out there, and the Jags are pretty close, but they have a rough start on their resume. If you look at the total of the 6 games, you could say who's looked the most dominant if you combine all 6 games. You'd probably say the Niners still, who's been number 1. And I'll tell you what, if the Niners lost that type of game where things didn't go their way and they were getting beat up and it was to Deshaun Watson, a good Browns team, Deshaun Watson, they barely lost. With the Eagles losing all these other teams, the Niners would have stayed at number 1. But not being able to find a way, the offense, Purdy not looking like Purdy, them losing to P.J. Walker, a guy that, DTR is supposed to be better, maybe not, but he's supposed to be. P.J. Walker was on the Bears and didn't even make the Bears roster. He was on a different team is the point. So that's still a tough one. Am I worried long term? No, I'd actually hesitate to say no, but only because of health. That's the Niners thing. They always look like the best team, and then they get beat up, and that kind of showed in this game. So that's actually what I'm worried long term, like thinking Super Bowl. But if they played P.J. Walker again, I think they would beat him up. Like I think it was like this one-time thing, but that's really not the power rankings. The power rankings aren't like predictions. So at the end of the day, they lost one they shouldn't lose. They let one slip away. They didn't look like themselves. I know they got beat up. So you almost have to move down from that. I thought only 1 spot because, again, if you look at the resume in total, they've looked, for most of it, they look like, besides this week, they look like the best team. But right now, the Lions, only with 1 loss. It was an overtime loss to the Seahawks. Since then, they've gotten hot. They played dominant football. The Bucs are a really good team, sneaky team. In Tampa, off the bye. I think wearing those throwbacks brings some momentum, brings some energy. I know it's a very, 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 very small part, but you get the point. And just dominating them, really. And Montgomery goes down. They don't have a run game, and they still find a way to dominate them. Jared Goff, like the quarterback play, which is huge for me, for anyone, when judging teams. I thought that was the best game Goff has played. I don't really care what the stats say. And the stats actually might back that up. I don't care. I think it's the best game he played as a Detroit Lion. I see improvement from him. The weapons are great. I just love they play really good team football. I really love that. Defensively, I know the Bucs aren't like the most electrifying offense. They're pretty good. They find ways to be clutch. They have Mike Evans. They got these playmakers, and then for them to just shut them down, the Bucs got a really good defense. They kind of showed it early in the Lions to adjust. to things, like being on that streak, looking dominant, being like one of the that's kind of the Niners thing, is like they're fast and physical. Every play, they wear you out. I see that in the Lions too. So I thought they were the most deserving team of being, like, based on what my system is based on. Who's hot, who's playing the best football, like eye test, who's winning games, who's staying consistent, who's beating good teams. Maybe not all these wins have been great teams for the Lions, but they just beat the Bucs. So they are number one right now. They are deserving of being number one. So that is what I've got, and maybe it feels good to have a little bit of change here too. So we'll see what happens after this upcoming week. Some really big games. We talked about the Dolphins and the Eagles is a massive one. The Niners are beat up, and they'll play the Vikings on Monday night in Minnesota. I know that's always a tough place to play, but I honestly think the Niners could rest some guys and still pull that one off. They're pretty good in primetime football. The Vikings are not. So we'll see. Could that be a trap game? I don't know if the Niners lose 2 games in a row. We'll see. But there's some good games across the board here. That's right. The Lions play the Ravens, and the Lions are going to be without David Montgomery. They will play the Baltimore Ravens. That's going to be a good game too. We'll see if somebody takes down number 1 again. I just can't wait to see. I can't wait to see. Hopefully no more of the officials in general. I thought were bad this week. I thought they were questionable on the Niners-Brown game. The Bills-Giants game for sure. But that Chargers-Cowboys game, I already went on a rant today. I was mad watching that game, and I love football. I love 2 good teams. I love that I'm not a fan of either team, not having to get mad at my team and the refs for making calls against my team. This should be a prime game for me to watch, and I was angry watching that game. Shouldn't be the case. I don't know. That was just in my criteria of officiated, like how games are officiated. Everyone's is different. Like, that was one of the worst I think I've ever seen. I really think so. So hopefully no more of that, NFL, please, if you're watching. That's going to wrap it up for my power rankings, though. We're here every single Tuesday morning with this, every Tuesday night with our weekly picks with the boys, every Wednesday with my score predictions, picks against the spread. And we have a lot more. We've been covering the trade deadline. We have a big video. Go check it out very recently. We'll have more where that came from, covering the draft pretty soon as well. We got you guys, so join us. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.